You probably have a fairly specific routine around bathing: a door that locks, a curtain, a screen, some arrangement of tiles and hot water, and personal space that's entirely yours for however long you need it. The bathroom, in the modern world, is one of the few remaining places where you can be completely, unambiguously alone. No notifications, no one asking you anything, just you. For most of human history, that did not exist. Not the hot water, not the tiles, not the door, and certainly not the aloneness. Ancient humans bathed together as a matter of course, not reluctantly, not shamefully, not as some unusual communal ritual, just routinely, as a basic feature of daily life. And understanding how they did it, and more interestingly, how they felt about it, tells you something surprising about the relationship between the body, privacy, and what we think of as civilization. Let us start with the oldest evidence, because the story begins earlier than most people expect. Archaeological sites across the ancient world show evidence of communal bathing that predates anything we'd recognize as a bathroom by thousands of years. At Mohenjo-Daro, the ancient city of the Indus Valley Civilization, dating to around 2500 BCE, excavators found the Great Bath, a large, carefully waterproofed pool in the center of the city, sealed with bitumen to prevent leakage, fed by a well, drained through a sophisticated drainage system. It was not hidden. It was not incidental. It was built at the heart of the city, deliberately, at significant expense, as a central civic structure. Who used it? Everybody? Together. Scholars debate whether it was primarily ceremonial or primarily practical, and the honest answer is probably both, because for most of ancient history, those categories were not cleanly separate. Bathing the body and bathing the soul tended to happen in the same water. The Romans took this to an extreme that still impresses. The baths of Caracalla, built in the 3rd century CE, could accommodate 6,000 to 8,000 bathers simultaneously, not sequentially, at the same time, moving between the frigidarium, the cold room, the tepidarium, the warm room, and the caldarium, the hot room. There were gyms, libraries, gardens, food vendors. The baths were not somewhere you went to get clean and leave. They were where you spent your afternoon, where you did business, gossiped, argued, philosophized. Seneca complained about living near one because of the noise, the grunting, the splashing. The man who sang in the water. Seneca was irritated by all of it, which is recognizable. It is the irritation of someone trying to have peace while a public space is being loudly, energetically public. For most of Roman history, men and women bathed together in the same spaces. Not always and not everywhere, and there were periods of official disapproval and attempted regulation, but the baseline was mixed bathing as a social norm. Your neighbor, your senator, your butcher, all of them, together, naked or nearly so. And the Romans did not consider this remarkable. What they considered remarkable was someone who refused to participate. Squeamishness about the communal bath was, in Roman social terms, a kind of eccentricity. The body was not something to be hidden. It was something to be maintained, displayed, and discussed. Before the Romans, before Mohenjo-Daro, ancient humans bathed in rivers, streams, lakes, whatever water was available. In bands of 20 to 50 people, you bathed when you needed to and where the water was. Together, because everyone was together for everything. Retreating alone to bathe would have been not just logistically awkward, but socially incomprehensible. Why would you want to do that? What are you hiding? Here's the thing that takes a moment to fully absorb: the discomfort that modern people feel about communal nudity, about sharing bathing space with others, is not a universal feature of human psychology. It is a learned cultural one. Anthropologists studying societies across the world have documented enormous variation in attitudes toward bodily exposure. In cultures where communal bathing is routine, the body in that context reads as neutral, neither sexual nor shameful. Just a body that happens to require maintenance, like almost any other thing that needs it. The charged quality that nudity carries in many modern Western contexts is something that has to be actively taught. Children have to learn it. Adults who move between cultures have to recalibrate it entirely. It is not baked into the hardware. It is installed by the culture you grew up in. Ancient public bathing operated on exactly this principle. The bathhouse was a social space where the body was present, but where the register was not primarily sexual or shameful. It was practical and civic. You were there to get clean, to move your body, to talk to people, to be part of the community that the bathhouse physically embodied. The nakedness was incidental to all of that. The same way the nakedness of a locker room is, in theory, incidental to the purpose of the locker room, except that for ancient bathers, the whole city was the locker room, and the locker room was also the Senate, the market, and the library. What about actual privacy in the bath? It existed, but it worked differently. In Roman Thermae, there were private bathrooms available for hire, smaller spaces where individuals or couples or small groups could use the water more quietly. These cost money and were a luxury rather than a default. The wealthy sometimes had private baths in their own homes, particularly in later periods. But the private bath was a status symbol, not a norm. It said, I can afford to bathe alone. Most people could not and did not expect to. The Japanese tradition of communal bathing, the onsen and the sento, offers a living example of how a sophisticated culture manages bathing without the modern Western relationship to bodily privacy. The bath is a social space with clear ritual structure. You wash yourself thoroughly before entering the shared water. The nakedness is expected and unremarkable. What would constitute a violation is behaving in the bath as though it were private, staring, making the other bathers feel observed. The social rules protect the communal ease of the space, not the covered body. This is functionally how ancient communal bathing worked everywhere it existed. The rules were social, not architectural. Privacy was managed through agreement and convention, not through curtains and locks. What changed? Several things gradually. Christianity brought a theology of the body considerably more complicated than anything the Romans had, one where bodily exposure carried moral weight in ways it had not before. Public bathing declined across Europe as the Western Roman Empire contracted. By the medieval period, communal bathing was increasingly associated with immorality, with things respectable people wanted to distance themselves from. The bathhouse became, in some contexts, a place where illicit things happened, partly because respectable people had stopped going and the moral tone had changed accordingly. Then came germ theory in the 19th century, which made bathing both more important and more private. If water spread disease, sharing it with strangers became alarming. The solution was not to stop bathing, it was to make bathing individual. Private running water, private tubs, private bathrooms. Cleanliness, which had always been communal, became personal. Personal became intimate. Intimate became private. The locked bathroom door is, in historical terms, extremely recent. So when you lock that door, you are not doing something ancient and instinctive. You're doing something modern, something that most humans who ever lived never did, because the infrastructure for it didn't exist and the desire for it hadn't yet been constructed by the specific combination of theology, architecture, germ theory, and Victorian propriety that produced the modern bathroom. The ancient humans who bathed together were not embarrassed. They were not gritting their teeth through an unavoidable ordeal. They were doing what humans do when they share physical space regularly and trust each other enough to be unremarkable in it. They were together, in the way that people are together, when together is simply the condition of being alive and not yet a problem anyone has thought to solve. We solved it. Whether that was an improvement is a more interesting question than it sounds.